It's 96.2 Touch FM, it's Belfield at breakfast, and you know, this is the best job in the world because not only do I get to do jokes on the radio and speak to my favourite people, I also get to talk to beautiful women who are mega talented. Nazanin, how are you?
I'm very well. With that introduction, how can I not be?
It's tremendous to see you, and I first heard about you on a programme called Bill O'Reilly.
Yes.
Which I watch on Fox News. He's the most objectionable guy, I think, in television. He's just horrible.
He's a monster.
You went on his programme and you got the better of him. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It was a challenge, definitely.
Now, you're a former Miss Canada, you're a top-selling singing artist, and you're gorgeous. Which one's the most important?
Well, I've had a very specific mission from a young age, and that's to help those most vulnerable in the world, those that are suffering. And I've always tried to combine my passions with the arts to try to advance these causes, and now music is the vehicle to do that.
One of the things that you're very passionate about is Iran and the stuff that's going on there. Mm-hmm. Let me give you my perception of Iran as an outsider that knows nothing about it. Nothing short of barbaric is the impression I get, the way they treat people, the way that they're treating us right now, the way that they treat themselves. That surely is not the case. How difficult is it to get people to believe that actually the people there are very nice and it's just a few people who have these extreme tendencies?
It's a difficult one, especially when in American media we're bombarded with images just like the ones you've described. And it's true that there is huge violations of human rights in the country. Women aren't treated the way they used to be, but the Iranian people are very different from the way the government is set up. The government is made up of fundamentalists that impose very discriminatory Sharia law. Women, are not allowed to travel without passport, without permission from their husbands or fathers. They're not allowed to become judges. A lot of different things like this. And journalists, bloggers are often imprisoned and tortured and killed because of saying anything remotely anti-regime. So these things all exist, yes, but it's those that are in power that are imposing this on the people, and the actual people are freedom-loving people. They're people like me, very Western notions that people can identify with. They want democracy. They want the separation between religion and state. They want the rule of law. And I know this firsthand because I get thousands of emails from people within the country who share with me their stories and tell me how repressed they are within the country, but that, Ahmadinejad, the president, or the supreme leader Khamenei do not represent their wants and wishes, but anytime they rise up to try to speak their wishes, they're suppressed. So I just hope in the world people will realize that those that are in power do not represent the people.
I don't get the feeling that women are well represented within the community of Iran. They seem to be suppressed. It seems like the men have their own way. They can have several wives. What is your take on that?
Well, we're all bothered. Even the women in Iran are bothered by this. In 1935, women had emancipation. They were equal with men. They were allowed to become presidents or judges. They're wearing miniskirts on the streets. It's just mostly in the last 27 years since the revolution happened that these rights have practically disappeared, where Sharia law is basically saying that a woman's life is worth half in legal terms. And the women are not used to this idea either. They don't wear burqas in Iran. That's in Afghanistan. They wear chadors, or they wear a veil with a manteau. But even they try to challenge that dress. In the last few months, there's been huge crackdowns on so-called malveiling, and are being beaten on the streets or imprisoned because of not properly wearing their hijab, the headdress. And even despite the fact of these threats of being imprisoned or tortured and such, they are still rising up. They still have the strength to hold those placards out into the streets saying that we want equality. And that just shows the strength of the Iranian women in general. Like, again, the Iranian women are not used to this subservient lifestyle. It's not like in a lot of Arabic countries that women have been, repressed for hundreds of years and they're used to wearing the veil and stuff and stuff like that. But the Iranian women, they don't want any of this. And again, a lot of women are being imprisoned and put into solitary confinement. And it just has to change.
All right, we're going to talk about the children in a moment. That's also of concern over there. The question I want to ask you, I worked in Africa for a while and left completely bemused by the entire country, believing that it will never be resolved. The issues with famine will never be resolved. The issues with corruption will never be resolved. And no matter how much money you throw at it, it is pointless, in my opinion, with Africa. Now, I know nothing about Iran, but it seems to me there are so many hurdles to overcome to give you equal equality as you would have here.
Right. I sing it in my song, Someday, the revolution song. And I guess naturally, I'm an optimistic person, but just through seeing the trends, knowing that 70% of the population in Iran is below the age of 30, knowing that they want nothing more than this freedom, and I think they're just waiting to get support from the international community so that they can rise and bring regime change towards democracy. The American government right now, they're threatening military action, which will be the complete the worst thing that they can do, because the Iranian people will feel attacked. They'll side with the government even though that's not what they want to do, and it'll be just one huge disaster. At the same time, they also don't want to see European countries practice appeasement and try to just give in to any wants of the in the diplomatic field just because of self-interest and trade and stuff. They just want to know that they're backed and that people actually in the world care about their human rights. If we all work on that together and we're leaders in this front, then I think the change can happen, very soon, because they want change more than anybody. It doesn't take bombs to want to, change the country.
I fear that Bush's swan song will be invading Iran. I fear that it will be his final calling.
Right.
Where will that leave the people?
The people will be hurt, the innocent women and children. It'll be a huge mess, and envisioning then peace and democracy and these kinds of things in the future, it'll take way longer if that's the case.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about you. And enough about the serious stuff. We'll find out whether an ugly bloke like me could ever get a date off a gorgeous lady like you. We're going to take a song from the new album, which is tremendous. It's an amazing sound you've got, and it's not surprising that you're such a big star around the world. And I'm sure this new album someday is going to do big time over here. You mentioned the song there about the oppression and how ladies can overcome that. Tell me about this song, and we'll play it for you now at Touch FM.
Someday is about my family's escape from Iran when the revolution happened. And more importantly, it's a song of hope to those that have been oppressed, those that have been suppressed and imprisoned, and those that feel like there is no escape from the so-called prison that they still live in, and that is Iran. I'm quoting one girl in particular who was sentenced to death by hanging from 3 men who tried to rape her. She said, outside of these prison walls, where the cell that she was in is also a prison for me. So in this song, I try to bring hope to the people that someday we will find a way and the darkness will fade away.
It's Alex Belfield with you, talking to a lady who has got a fascinating life, because let's face it, most ladies who are as gorgeous as you haven't really got a brain in modelling and just stick to the modelling stuff. I think the reason Kate Moss continues to be the most successful right now is because she doesn't open her mouth, because there's probably not a lot going on there, and that's smart. Now, how did you become the gorgeous glamour model, amazing beauty that actually had a brain and something to say? That must have been a risk, wasn't it?
I think we should give the benefit of the doubt to the models and to people that compete in the Miss World competition and such. A lot of people, I find particularly here in Britain, that they stereotype anyone that has like this layer of skin on the outside that actually appears quite nice. You know what I mean? We're all the same people inside. We have the same souls, and the brain doesn't change.
I'm just deeply unattractive and bitter, you see.
I don't know. Well, my again, as I said, my goal from a very young age has been trying to help people, and I try to use every blessing that I've been given from God to try to help humanity in my own way. And if that means using my beauty to attract attention to a cause, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If I can use my voice to spread messages of love and freedom, then I'm going to do that. And if I want to get into the political front, well, if my beauty is going to cause a rift there, well, they're just going to have to deal with it.
It is interesting, though, because you're incredibly educated and eloquent and knowledgeable about the things you talk about. I think if you were wearing a veil, and Wolf Ugly, I don't think anybody would listen. And that's the sad thing about this world, isn't it?
It is sad. And I think it's really upsetting, the fact that oftentimes it takes celebrities to talk about causes for others to take an interest. Just yesterday I was watching the news and they were making such a hoopla that Victoria and David Beckham were moved to the United States. Is this the news these days? There's people suffering in Darfur and other parts of the world, and they're not covering these issues, and yet they're talking about these things. It's absolutely disgusting for me, but I mean, I know the reality of the West. I know that people listen to sports stars and celebrities, and that's why I even entered the Miss World competition in the first place. I knew that I had to get some kind of title in order to reach the masses. Now with my music, same thing, and music is a really powerful tool. You can reach a lot of people's hearts through, music, and it is upsetting, but you got to use, what you have within the system so that you can change it one day.
See, America's even worse. I mean, their news programs are entertainment news programs. Yes. To get airtime like this to talk seriously would be virtually impossible. Yet if you were willing to go on a Howard Stern or something and take your top off, you're going to get 30 minutes.
Yes.
How interested are they to listen to your side? Because the Americans are very bigoted in their own opinion, and especially with the warmongering that goes on continually, especially with Iran at the moment, it must be very difficult to get airtime or to get an ear for anybody to listen to you.
I do. Well, I mean, again, oftentimes to get onto one of those programs, they hear the angle of former Miss Canada trying to save a life, or they use these kind of aspects to their own benefit, and oftentimes they even try to impose their agenda while I'm on the show. And I'm very straightforward and strong in saying that, no, you're not going to use me to your benefit. I'm going to talk about what I am here to talk about, and I'm going to offer my perspective. I remember once that I was trying to give my perspective on Fox News, and they quickly shut the program off and cut me off. And I was so upset that, they could do such a thing, but, they've got the power. But if they invite me on their quarters, well, I'm going to be the wolf in sheep's clothing,
Well, they're the equivalent to our Daily Mail. They have their own agenda, and if it doesn't fit with that agenda, you won't get airtime. And certainly Bill O'Reilly, where I first saw you, is the worst at that. I mean, I've heard him say the most incredible things on a news program. And the sad thing is, in America, people watch that as news, therefore fact.
I know. It's very scary, and that's why it's so important for me to infiltrate these kinds of systems where people are glued to programs like Fox and O'Reilly, and they only have a one-sided view of the world. And let's just say, like Iran, they think that all Iranians are terrorists with turbans on their heads. That's how they describe it. They've said that to me directly, like, Iranians all terrorists. They've got the towels on their heads. I'm like, excuse me, most of the men there do not wear anything on their heads, and the Iranian people are not like this. Please take time to get to know one Iranian before you make such a statement.
How willing are people to listen to you in this country? How are you finding the media over here?
So far, so good. Everyone's been very positive, except, again, I find that they focus a lot on the whole beauty aspect of things, and they try to put down the Miss World organization, and, they have their opinions, fine. But, again, it's just about not judging someone by the cover and just getting to know the individual and not stereotyping.
It is interesting. We have a major problem over here with some slappers who are as thick as two short planks, have nothing to say, and are purely a pair of breasts, who make an awful lot of money, who are quite stupid. I don't need to name names, Jade Goody, Jordan. These people seem to get more airtime than anybody else. I noticed that a lady called Jodie Marsh has got her own program starting this weekend on MTV, which is another fly-on-the-wall documentary. I'm sure Monday morning I will have to talk about it, as everybody else will. Models are not really very well regarded in this country. And then you have the supermodels like the Kate Mosses who are so coked up to the eyeballs, they don't deserve respect either. So I suppose to find someone like you is very rare, and that's probably why they're so surprised that you do have something to say in their defense.
Yes, I guess it reflects on our today's society, makes us question, how did we come to this point to idolize such superficiality? I think we just have to reflect back on ourselves and try to understand why. Where has the world gone?
To end this conversation full circle, I've got to ask you a question, because you're talking about superficiality and that not mattering. So would I actually stand a chance in getting a date with somebody as gorgeous as you? Because to be honest with you, I'm a laughing stock. If they're not over 70 or 400 pounds or 35 stone, I don't get a look.
That's not true.
It is true, honestly.
The listeners who I'm looking at
Nazanin,
him,
I'm telling you.
He's very fit, very nice. He's being very modest.
Don't patronize me. Honestly, seriously, this is terrible.
I only have 2 requirements for, trying to find my soulmate, and that's if they have a very big heart and if they're intelligent, because there's nothing sexier than an intelligent man.
Well, that's me out then on both counts, isn't it, really?
Oh, well, there you go.
Nazanin, it's great talking to you, and thank you for coming on the programme. It's a real pleasure to talk to you, and I think you do your profession the world of good, and I hope that somebody will listen. I fear it will be in vain with Iran in the near future. I've got a feeling that Bush is not going to help your country very much. In fact, on the contrary, I think he's probably going to do more damage than has ever been done before. I just pray that friends and family are not affected by it. Somehow that seems impossible as well, because they don't matter either, do they, in conflict and war?
Well, I pray the same thing, and, I sing in my song, "Someday we'll find a way," and I say someday is right now. Now's the time to make change. And anyone who's listening and you want to make change, please go to stopchildexecutions.com to try to save the 70 minors who are currently on death row there.
That doesn't help their cause, does it, for me to sympathise with Iran when I find out that 70 kids are on death row?
No, I mean, again, it's the government that are imposing these practices.
What have they done to get on death row?
Different reasons. A couple years ago, 2 boys were hung publicly because they were homosexual. The campaign that I was running last year about a girl named Nazanin Afshin-Jam, who was sentenced to death because I told you the 3 men attempted to rape her. She had simply defended herself and stabbed this man. So she was put on death row. Another woman was put on death row because she was teaching Baha'i classes, and the Baha'i faith is not recognized by the leaders in power. So
when you give examples like that, then, are you seriously telling me, Nazanin, that you truly believe that it is possible and feasible that very shortly this will stop and the governments will stop these kind of criminal acts? And they are criminal acts.
Well, in the case of Nazanin, we were successful. The campaign that I led, we gathered 350,000 signatures on a petition, lobbied the UN and the Canadian Parliament, the EU, and this all enacted pressure to grant a stay of execution for this young girl and order a new trial. And in the new trial, she was actually released completely from prison after spending 2 years there. So there is hope. We know that, by uniting together, having our voices heard, that they actually do count for something. So if enough people care and care about human rights and care about humanity, whether they live in Iran or anywhere around the world, well, then we can make that difference. But it's just a matter of people caring enough.
Nazanin, thank you for coming on the programme. The new album's called Someday, and thank you for paying me a compliment. I appreciate it. I question your sincerity, but it's nice nevertheless to feel important. Nazanin, thanks for coming on the show.
It's been great. Thank you.